our research profiles here in Mary Immaculate College, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Loic Guyon, Senior Lecturer and Head of the Department of French Studies. Loic, we're delighted to have you to take part today.
Thanks for having me.
In 2009, you were appointed a Senior Lecturer and Head of the Department of French Studies in Mary Immaculate College. What led you to do your academic career here in Ireland?
Well, to make a long story short, after I graduated in France, in Grenoble, I decided to do an MA in comparative literature. And I chose to do this year as an Erasmus student abroad at the University of Kent in England. And this year abroad was a true revelation for me. And that's why I always encourage our students to go abroad if they can. I discovered the British academic system with its beautiful campuses, its great working environment. And so I decided to stay there. And I was offered to do a PhD and to become a teaching assistant there. So I did a PhD, and after my PhD, I was offered to do a postdoctoral research fellowship at the Moore Institute in NUIG. And that's how I came to Ireland, that's how I discovered the country. That's how I fell in love with Ireland, and I was lucky enough to be able to stay and do the job I wanted to do here.
What are your main areas of research?
My main areas of research are issues of crime and justice in 18th and 19th century France, which was basically the topic of my PhD, and 19th century French travel literature.
How did you become interested in these areas?
When I started working on my PhD, I had a very broad focus for my topic. I wanted to study figures of outlaw heroes in 19th century French literature. And there were many different types of outlaw heroes. There were pirates, there were gentlemen thieves, and one of those types was figures of convicts and prisoners. And I began with this particular type of outlaw heroes, and very quickly I discovered that there was a whole thesis to write about this particular topic. So that's how I came to work on issues of crime and justice, and more specifically on the debate for the abolition of the death penalty at the time. And at about the same time, I also became interested in figures of adventurers in 19th century French literature. And this led me to study in the field of travel literature.
What are your latest publications?
My latest publications are two academic volumes, two co-edited academic volumes, which I co-edited with my friend and colleague Dr. Sylvie Recomora-Gros from Aix-Marseille University. The first volume was published in 2011 by the Sorbonne University Press and was entitled Voyage et Théâtre. It dealt with the representation of travel on stage and theatrical exoticism from the 16th to the 19th century. And the second volume is entitled Images et Voyages and deals with the topic of the iconographic representation of travel, all the travel images which were produced throughout the centuries by various travelers. This volume was published by the Presse de l'Université de Provence in 2012.
What are you working on at the moment?
At the moment, I'm finalizing the edition of a third academic volume, which I'm co-editing with somebody else, this time with Dr. Andrew Watts from the University of Birmingham. And this volume is entitled Aller-Retour, 19th Century France in Motion. It will be published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing in the course of this year. And it deals with the idea of movement in 19th century France.
One of your PhD students has just completed their thesis. What are your other PhD students working on?
Yes, we just had David Ledan completing his PhD. He successfully defended his thesis in December, on the 8th of December. That was on Émile Zola's sociological vision. And currently we have 3 other students in the department, 3 other PhD students. 2 of them are working under my supervision. One of them is working on British poet Renée Vivienne, who wrote all her poetry in French at the turn between the 19th century and the 20th century. And the other student is working on 19th century French playwright Casimir de Lavigne.
Currently, you are the president of the Irish Association of French and Francophone Studies, the ADEFI. Can you tell us a little bit more about this association and other scholarly associations you're involved with?
The ADEFI, the Irish Association for French and Francophone Studies, is an association which promotes research in the field of French studies and Francophone studies in Ireland, but also abroad through the organization of a yearly conference which attracts specialists of French studies and Francophone studies from all around the world. I'm also secretary of the Society of 19e, which is a scholarly association specializing in the field of 19th century French studies and which is probably the most dynamic association of its kind at the moment.
In April, you've been invited to give a talk in the University of New Hampshire in the US. What are you going to talk about?
My talk is going to be about the theatrical representation of travel on stage, and this will basically be a general presentation of my findings so far in this particular field of research.
Why would you recommend studying French here at Mary Immaculate College?
Well, we are a very friendly and dynamic department with very research active members of staff, and we always strive to make the time our students spend on campus here as good as possible.
Loic, thank you so much for taking part. I hope it wasn't too traumatic for you.
Not at all. Thank you.